The dim red glow of emergency lights pulsed rhythmically along the narrow metal corridors of Zartal 8. Captain Elena Drake moved silently, her squad trailing close behind her like shadows in the oppressive gloom. The muffled hum of alien machinery thrummed in the background, broken only by the faint, ominous hiss of venting steam. "Captain," Sergeant Quan whispered, his voice barely audible through the comm link embedded in her helmet. "No signs of hostiles yet, but we're on borrowed time. The patrols shift every 20 minutes. Understood," Elena replied, her tone clipped but calm. She gestured for the squad to advance. Each step felt like a gamble, the clatter of their boots muted by sound-dampening gear but still loud enough to make her nerves itch. The air was thick and stale, carrying a faint metallic tang that turned her stomach. It wasn't just the environment, she could feel the weight of what this place represented. Zartal 8 wasn't just a prison, it was a slaughterhouse. "Eyes sharp," she murmured into the calm. "We're here to get the intel and get out alive. Let's keep it that way." The squad reached a sealed blast door, its surface streaked with rust-like alien corrosion. Quan moved forward, pulling out a compact hacking module. He plugged it into the control panel, his gloved fingers dancing over the device's interface. "Give me 30 seconds," Quan muttered. "Make it 20, Elena said, her eyes scanning the dim corridor behind them. She didn't like the silence. It felt wrong. The door hissed open, revealing a cavernous chamber bathed in a sickly green light. Elena stepped inside, her rifle raised, sweeping the room for threats. Her breath hitched as the scene unfolded before her. Rows of suspended bodies lined the walls, encased in translucent pods filled with a viscous fluid. Human bodies. Men and women, their faces contorted in frozen agony. Some were horribly disfigured, others unnaturally emaciated. The sight turned Elena's stomach, but she forced herself to move forward. "By the stars," whispered Private Jensen, his voice cracking. "Keep it together," Elena snapped, though her own voice was tight. "Quan, find the control hub. I want everything this place has on record." Quan nodded, moving to a console at the center of the room. The rest of the squad spread out, their movements careful, weapons ready. Elena approached one of the pods, her gloved hand hovering over its surface. A young man floated inside, his eyes half open and lifeless, his torso marred by jagged scars. "We were too late for them," she muttered under her breath. A bitter taste filled her mouth. "Captain," Quan called, urgency sharpening his tone. "You're going to want to see this." She crossed to the console, where Quan was pulling up files on a glowing holographic screen. The data streamed rapidly, flashing between anatomical diagrams, recordings of experiments, and logs detailing the Zarvax's twisted intentions. "They've been experimenting on prisoners," Quan said grimly. "Genetic testing, biological weapons research, this isn't just war. They're using our people like lab rats." Elena stared at the screen, her jaw tightening. One file caught her attention, a recorded video marked Kolzak, Directive 47. She tapped it, and a cold, resonant Zarvax voice filled the room. "These humans are weak, but their biological adaptability intrigues us," the voice of High Warden Kolzak intoned. "With the proper adjustments they may serve the Dominion's purposes, if not as soldiers then as fodder." Rage bubbled beneath Elena's carefully controlled exterior. Her hand curled into a fist. "We need to move," she said, her voice steely. "Quan, download everything. This has to get back to the Union." A sharp, mechanical screech echoed from somewhere beyond the chamber. Elena's blood ran cold. "Contacts!" Jensen hissed. "Movement in the corridor." "Pack it up!" Elena barked. "Now!" Quan yanked the module from the console, and the team regrouped. The sound of heavy, methodical footsteps grew louder, accompanied by the unmistakable whine of Zarvax plasma weapons charging. "Rear exit now!" Elena ordered, pointing toward a secondary corridor on their map. The squad moved quickly, but the Zarvax were faster. A burst of green plasma fire scorched the wall near Elena's head as they entered the passage. She spun, dropping to one knee and returning fire. Her squad joined in, the tight corridor amplifying the deafening roar of the firefight. "Jensen, suppressing fire! Quan, cover our six!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. The Zarvax were relentless, their towering, insectoid forms moving with an eerie precision. Elena's pulse thundered in her ears as she fired shot after shot, her rifle's plasma bolts tearing through the enemy ranks. "Drake!" Quan yelled. "We've got a heavy inbound!" Elena turned just as a massive Zarvax soldier rounded the corner, its armor glinting in the dim light. It raised a shoulder-mounted cannon, the weapon's glow intensifying. "Scatter!" Elena shouted. The team dove for cover as the cannon fired, sending a blazing projectile down the corridor. The explosion rocked the passageway, sending debris raining down. Elena rolled to her feet, her helmet's HUD flashing warnings about structural instability. "We're boxed in," Quan said, his voice strained. "No, we're not," Elena said, spotting a ventilation shaft overhead. She fired her grapple hook, anchoring it to the grate. "Up and out!" The squad scrambled into the shaft, crawling through the tight, claustrophobic space as the Zarvax pounded below. Elena's muscles burned, but she didn't stop until they emerged into a docking bay. "Extraction points just ahead," she said, scanning for their ship. Their vessel, the Ironclad, hovered nearby, its ramp already lowered. Zarvax sentinels swarmed into the bay, firing as the team sprinted for the ship. "Go, go, go!" Elena yelled, covering the rear. She boarded last, collapsing against the ramp as it sealed shut. The Ironclad roared to life, rocketing away from the station as Zarvax fighters gave chase. "Jensen, status report!" Elena called. "Shields holding," Jensen said, panting. "We're clear for now." Elena slumped into a seat, the datapad clutched in her hands. Her mind raced with the horrors they'd seen, but one thought cut through the chaos. The galaxy would know what the Zarvax had done, and humanity would not forgive. The council chamber of Nova Concordia buzzed with tension as Captain Elena Drake stepped onto the central platform. Her uniform, singed and battle-worn from the mission, bore silent testimony to the horrors she had just witnessed. Around her, the gathered leaders of the Terran Union, their faces a mixture of skepticism, outrage, and grim determination, awaited her report. At the forefront of the crescent-shaped table sat Chancellor Adric Venner, his hawk-like gaze fixed on Elena. Beside him stood Admiral Victor Hayes, his silver hair and deep-set eyes betraying a lifetime of hard decisions and grueling battles. Unlike the other council members, Hayes gave Elena a slight nod, an unspoken vote of confidence. Elena inserted the datapad into the chamber's central console. The holographic display flared to life, projecting images of the atrocities on Zartal 8. Gasps rippled through the room as the councilors took in the gruesome evidence: rows of lifeless bodies in pods, logs of genetic experiments, and the cold voice of High Warden Kolzak detailing humanity's disposable utility. "This," Elena began, her voice steady but hard, "is what the Zarvax Dominion has been hiding. These are not prisoners of war, they're victims of systematic genocide. And they are human!" A murmur spread among the council, punctuated by outraged exclamations. One counselor, an older man with a skeptical frown, leaned forward. "How do we know this isn't fabricated?" he demanded. "The Zarvax claim these allegations are baseless propaganda." Elena's jaw tightened, but she held his gaze. "Because I was there. My team risked everything to extract this evidence. Are you suggesting we jeopardized our lives for lies?" Chancellor Venner raised a hand, silencing the room. "Captain Drake, your bravery is not in question. But what you're proposing, abandoning diplomacy and engaging in full-scale war, could plunge the entire galaxy into chaos. We need more than outrage. We need strategy." Elena stepped closer to the console, her voice rising with restrained passion. "With respect, Chancellor, diplomacy has done nothing. The Dominion sees it as weakness. Every moment we hesitate, they kill more of our people. How many more Zartal 8 stations are out there? How many more lives will be lost before we act?" Admiral Hayes leaned forward. "Elena's right. he said, his voice measured but firm. This isn't just about retaliation. It's about survival. If we let this slide, we're giving the Dominion a green light to wipe us out. A younger counselor, her face pale with shock, spoke hesitantly. But what if we provoke them into escalating? The Dominion's fleet outnumbers ours 2-1. How can we ensure victory? We don't need to outnumber them, Elena countered. We need to outthink them. The Dominion relies on fear and brute force. But they've underestimated us before, and they'll do it again. If we strike strategically, cripple their operations, expose their crimes, we can rally not just humanity but other species oppressed by the Zarvax. We don't have to fight alone. Venner studied her, his expression unreadable. And you believe this evidence will be enough to sway public opinion? To justify war on this scale? Elena took a deep breath, steadying herself. It's not just about evidence. It's about conviction. Humanity needs to see that we're willing to fight for our survival, that we're not afraid to stand against tyranny. If we wait for the perfect moment, there won't be anyone left to save. For a long moment, the chamber was silent, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. Finally, Venner stood. We will deliberate, he said, his tone neutral. Captain Drake, your report is noted. You are dismissed. Elena clenched her fists but nodded. Understood, Chancellor. As she left the chamber, Admiral Hayes followed, catching up with her in the dim corridor outside. You did well in there, he said, his voice low. Did I? Elena muttered, her frustration barely contained. They're still debating while the Zarvax keeps slaughtering. Hayes placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm. Politics move slowly, but you lit a fire under them. Trust me, they'll act. Elena sighed, her shoulders slumping. I hope you're right. Because if they don't, they will, Hayes interrupted. And when they do, I want you leading the charge. I'll make sure of it. Their conversation was cut short by a notification on Elena's comm link. A public broadcast had just gone live, showing clips of the Zarvax atrocities. Someone had leaked the evidence. It's out, Hayes said, his lips curling into a rare smile. Let's see how the galaxy reacts. Hours later, Elena stood in a crowded command room, watching news feeds flood in from across human colonies. Protests erupted in major cities, citizens demanding action against the Zarvax. Political pundits debated the morality of war, while military analysts dissected potential strategies. In one feed, a young woman held up a sign that read, "My brother was on Zartal 8. Fight for him, *." Elena's throat tightened. She turned as Hayes approached, a grim but determined look on his face. The council's voted, he said. And? We're mobilizing. Elena exhaled sharply, a mix of relief and dread washing over her. What's the plan? You're leading the first strike, Hayes said. High-priority target, a Dominion logistics hub supplying their front lines. Cripple it, and we cut off their advance. But it won't be easy. Elena nodded, her mind already racing. It never is. Later that night, Elena sat alone in her quarters, staring at a hologram of her family, her parents and younger brother, their faces bright with laughter in a moment forever frozen in time. They had been killed in the Zarvax's first attack on Earth's outer colonies. Her fingers brushed the hologram, and she whispered, I'll make them pay. For all of us. The comlink chimed, pulling her back to the present. It was Quan. Captain, he said, his voice steady but serious. The team's ready. We've got your back. Elena straightened, the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders once more. Good. Because this time, we're not just fighting for survival. We're fighting for justice. The ironclad emerged from hyperspace into the shadow of a blood-red nebula, the swirling gases casting an ominous hue over the battlefield. In the distance, the Dominion logistics hub loomed, a colossal station bristling with defenses, surrounded by Zarvax warships in a meticulous formation. To Captain Elena Drake, it looked like a predator's lair. Elena, Quan's voice crackled over the comm. We've got 3 heavy cruisers, 4 destroyers, and a swarm of fighter patrols. Their formation's tight. They're expecting us. Elena leaned forward in her command chair, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Good, she replied, her voice calm but sharp. Let them think we're walking into their trap. The bridge crew was a mix of seasoned veterans and fresh recruits, their faces etched with a mixture of determination and apprehension. Lieutenant Arya Voss, the ship's weapons officer, glanced at Elena. Orders, Captain? Elena stood, her presence commanding. We're not here for a fair fight. We're here to cripple them. Quan, deploy the decoys. Voss, ready the rail cannons. Jensen, keep us cloaked until we're within firing range of that station. The ironclad shuddered slightly as a salvo of stealth drones launched into the void, their signal signatures mimicking a full-strike fleet. Almost immediately, the Zarvax forces reacted, shifting their formation to intercept. They're biting, Quan reported. Keep us on course, Elena ordered. Her gaze hardened. Voss, target the station's shield generators. I want them down on the first volley. As the ironclad slipped past the distracted Zarvax fleet, Elena couldn't help but feel the mounting pressure. Every decision carried the weight of lives, her crews, her squads, and the countless innocents relying on this mission's success. Approaching firing range, Jensen announced, his hands steady on the helm. Cloak off, Elena commanded. Voss, fire. The ship's rail cannons roared to life, sending streaks of white-hot plasma across the void. The first volley struck the station's shield generators with pinpoint precision, sending a cascade of sparks and debris into the nebula-lit darkness. Alarms blared on the bridge as the Zarvax scrambled to respond. Direct hit! Voss exclaimed, her eyes gleaming with triumph. Good. Now we move fast, Elena said. Quan, get our infiltration team ready. Voss, keep their ships occupied, draw their fire away from the station. As the ironclad unleashed another barrage, Elena and her squad assembled in the hangar. The boarding shuttle, small and sleek, sat waiting, its engines humming with barely contained energy. Quan handed Elena her helmet. Station defenses are in chaos, he said. This is our best shot. Elena donned the helmet, her voice steady through the comms. Then we don't waste it. Remember, we're here to disable their logistics network and get out. Stick to the plan, and we'll make it back alive. Her team nodded, their resolve evident despite the tension in the air. The shuttle launched, weaving through the chaos as Zarvax fighters clashed with the ironclad. Inside, Elena gripped her seat tightly, her heart pounding with the familiar rhythm of adrenaline and dread. Docking in 30 seconds, Quan said, his tone all business. Elena checked her weapon, a compact plasma rifle designed for close-quarters combat. Remember, this station is the backbone of their supply chain. Without it, their fleet's expansion grinds to a halt. Let's remind them what humanity's capable of. The shuttle docked with a jarring thud, the boarding clamps locking into place. The airlock hissed open, revealing a dimly lit corridor filled with alien machinery. Move out, Elena ordered. The team advanced quickly but cautiously, their footsteps muffled by combat boots. The station's architecture was cold and unwelcoming, its walls pulsating faintly with a sickly green light. Contacts, Quan whispered, pointing to a junction ahead. Zarvax soldiers, 4 tall, insectoid figures, stood guard, their weapons gleaming menacingly. Take them down quietly, Elena said. The squad moved like wraiths, their suppressors hissing softly as they dispatched the guards with lethal precision. Elena caught one Zarvax as it turned, her blade slicing through its carapace before it could sound the alarm. Clear, she said, wiping the blade on her armor. They pressed forward, reaching the station's main data hub. Quan set to work immediately, connecting his device to the alien console. Downloading their logistics network, he muttered. This'll take 2 minutes. Make it 1, Elena replied, her rifle trained on the corridor. The tension was palpable, every second feeling like an eternity. Finally, Quan's device beeped. Got it, he said, pulling the drive free. Good, Elena said. Plant the charges. Explosives were placed on critical junctions around the hub, their timers set to a coordinated detonation. As they finished, a low, guttural roar echoed through the station. "They know we're here," Quan said grimly. "Then we move," Elena snapped. "Double time to the shuttle." The team raced through the corridors as alarms blared and Zarvak's reinforcements closed in. Plasma fire lit up the passageways, forcing the squad to dive for cover. "Drake, we've got a choke point up ahead," Jensen called, firing at the advancing enemy. "Hold them off!" Elena yelled, her own rifle spitting bolts of energy. Quan lobbed a grenade, the explosion sending shards of alien metal and body parts scattering. The squad pushed forward, their movements coordinated despite the chaos. Finally, they reached the airlock, the shuttle waiting just beyond. "Board now!" Elena ordered. The team piled into the shuttle as the Zarvak soldiers closed in. Elena was the last to board, firing one last shot before slamming the hatch shut. "Go!" she shouted to the pilot. The shuttle tore away from the station, its engines roaring. Behind them, the explosives detonated in a fiery chain reaction, ripping through the station and sending shockwaves across the nebula. Back aboard the ironclad, Elena watched the destruction unfold on the main display. The station crumbled, its supply lines severed. "Target neutralized," Quan said, a rare smile breaking through his usual seriousness. Elena nodded, exhaustion catching up to her. "One station down. But this is just the beginning." Admiral Hayes's voice crackled over the comms. "Well done, Captain! Humanity just struck its first blow. And the galaxy is watching." Elena leaned back in her chair, the weight of the mission settling over her. Victory was a fleeting moment, but it was a start. For the first time in years, humanity had hope.